Legal contributor and professor of law at University of Baltimore, Kim Wehle. Kim, thanks so much for joining us. What's next for the former president here? The Colorado Supreme Court ruling against him. They're promising to appeal. Now what?
Well, it would go to the Supreme Court of the United States, which now already is considering Donald Trump's claim of complete, absolute presidential immunity for January 6th. And there's also a related case that could affect two of the counts pending against him in D.C. relating to the January 6th insurrection. Also, the Supreme Court just took that. So that's a lot on the plate of the Supreme Court. And there's, of course, a lot of pressure across the board because the caucuses are coming up, Super Tuesday, and of course the election is less than a year away in November of next year.
And to your point there, if this does go all the way up to the Supreme Court, could the justices take this case up that quickly and decide before the Iowa caucus and New Hampshire primaries, which are about to get underway?
Well, we saw the court do this in 2020 with the election and all the cases relating to the false claims of election fraud, but also ballot counting, mail-in ballots, things like that. The court can do things rapidly if it decides. And so I think there's also going to be all eyes on the court and how, with these are split decisions, if they're thinking about this politically, there are doctrines that they can employ to step out of it and just not get involved, or they can get involved. But the thing to keep in mind is even if the court sets a standard on what the definition is of an insurrection and whether the president is an officer, that wouldn't necessarily affect all of the states because each state has different laws for how you get on the ballot. And so even a Supreme Court ruling isn't necessarily going to impact everyone because you need a hook to get into court to begin with that doesn't have a lot to do with the 14th Amendment. Here it has to do with who gets to be on the ballot under Colorado law.
And what happens if the Supreme Court declines to take the case?
Well, then the Colorado Supreme Court's decision, the one that came down today, that stands, and Donald Trump is not on the ballot in the state of Colorado for the 2024 presidential election.
What do you think about the state's decision? We were just talking to Rick. Obviously, other states have considered this, but then weighed in the other direction. Your thoughts on how Colorado is ruling here?
Well, honestly, I mean, I see the political argument, but the Constitution is the Constitution, and the reason it's in there, it's a post-Civil War amendment to keep Confederates out of the reconstructed government. So the Constitution's the top dog in the country. You can't be 25 and one for president. So I mean, that supersedes voters really, and I think that the Supreme Court makes the argument, the Colorado Supreme Court, that the president is treated as an officer 25 other times in the Constitution. So I don't think it's an invalid ruling.
Is there any precedent for a case like this that we can look to for guidance?
Not from the Supreme Court, no. I mean, there are just a handful right after the Civil War, but it's really sort of gone by the wayside because we've never been in a position where someone running for president engaged in an insurrection. And both courts now have found that, the lower court and the Supreme Court.
If you were a betting woman, do you think the Supreme Court takes up this case? And let's go even further. How do they rule?
Well, I think, given that it's percolating in multiple states, the Supreme Court might wait to see what's happening in other places. I think if they do take it up, it would be a split decision. I think there's no way it would be sort of a unanimous ruling. I'm sure the conservatives would find a technical reading of this idea of officers. But the Colorado Supreme Court applied dictionary definitions from 1787. So it's kind of a conservative approach, but it's so political, Lindsay. It's just kind of stunning from a constitutional law perspective that we're in this moment in American history right now.
It really is fascinating indeed. Kim Wehle, we thank you so much for your insight. Really appreciate it.
Hi, everyone. George Stephanopoulos here. Thanks for checking out the ABC News YouTube channel. If you'd like to get more videos, show highlights, and watch live event coverage, click on the right over here to subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to download the ABC News app for breaking news alerts. Thanks for watching.